Hey everybody, how's it going? I am just getting things set up for the Patreon here. Something weird happened with YouTube. So I'm getting everything set up now, which means that the video is ready to roll now. And there we go. People should be able to watch my very washed out currently face. I'm not sure what's going on with the lighting here. I've got to figure that out. I keep saying that every stream. So an exciting day today. We've got a lot of questions and ground to cover. And we have just a ton of great things to talk about. I will start with the elephant in the room, which is the Wild Mount book, The Explorer's Guide to Wild Mount, which is a critical role campaign setting book that is also an official Dungeons and Dragons book, will be coming out in March. And I wrote about 50,000 words for it, magic items, some spells, some monsters, a short adventure, a bunch of lore and other stuff from me are in that book. So I will talk a little bit about that process later on. I also want to talk about my dad's monster manual, and I'm going to get into all of your questions that you have. So let's see here. Let me crank up the volume a little bit. Ba-boom, ba-boom. And what do we have? Um, so Ian would like to know my RPG resolutions, of course. But first, let me give a shout out to Ian's wife. Her birthday is today, January 13th. Happy birthday to Haley. Haley, let me tell you something. You already have the greatest gift of all, and that is that husband of yours, Ian, a tremendous human being, one of the best that we have on this here planet. I'm sure you agree. Just an amazing guy, so friendly, so kind, so funny, so fun, and a true love for his family and for, of course, his daughter as well, Rosalie. So my hat is off to you, Haley. Happy birthday, and Ian. You're a good person for doing this for your wife. And if you want to know who I am, I'm a weirdo online who talks a bunch about role playing games. So that is me. All of that being said, now let's get into RPG resolutions. Whew, RPG resolutions. Let's see if I'm going to talk about my RPG resolutions. I typically don't make a lot of resolutions, but I do kind of like set goals, which I guess is kind of the same thing, right? Um, so I want to read a bunch more RPGs. I have taken to over the last several years reading RPG books while I work out. So I want to read a bunch. I want to play a bunch of new RPGs, and my big thing is I want to make sure I'm gonna try like designing products outside of D&D. I've got a couple. I worked on Capers. Burn Bright is coming out. That is a huge one that I've worked on outside of RPGs. I also have worked on City of Mist, but I want to beef up that side of things too, because I think it's fun to do. It's fun to learn about other role playing games, but it also makes me a better designer. So play, read, and design for other games that are not Dungeons and or Dragons related. So I'm eager to try my hand in some non fantasy settings and see how all of that goes. So we'll see. I'd love to also know what your RPG resolutions are if you're watching this. So drop in the comments on the Patreon or for this video, or shoot me an email, james@introcaso.com. Tell me your RPG resolutions, because I like to know what people are thinking, or goals, or I'm not going to hold them to you. Don't worry about that. Ian's also got some more questions about my end of decade. So decade, not just the year. That's important. Top 3 list, top 3 creatures, top 3 magic items, top 3 modules / adventures / books, most overlooked, etc. So, there are a lot of things to get in here, and I think that these are always hard because then I will think of something invariably later, probably months from now, and be like, "Oh, that should have been on the list." So one thing that I want to do is talk about top three creatures. I gotta start off with there is an adventure. It is for, I would say, like the OSR classic Dungeons and Dragons. You can really play it in any system, though. It's called the Trail of Stone and Sorrow, and it's from Zarkov Kalowski, or Kowalski, sorry. Mixed up the L and the O. It's a pay what you want PDF on Drive Through RPG, and more people should check it out and pay at least the 250 that is the suggested price for it, because it's a really great adventure. And I don't want to say too much, but there is a creature in the adventure that is responsible for kicking off what was supposed to be a one shot, an entire campaign with my friends that is now had over 50 sessions. This creature is extremely compelling, dangerous, interesting. So yeah, I recommend checking it out. It is just a really awesome adventure. It is described as a neoclassical Greek revival and OSR adventure game adventure. So check it out. Um, it is really really good. And leave it a review too. It's not getting enough reviews. So okay, so there we go. I've got one creature so far. Creature number two. I think in this decade of ours, the flump came back in a big bad way. You gotta give it to the flump, man. Specifically, Teos Abadia's championing of the flump. Oh man, the flump is so good. A comical creature, but a lovable creature. One with a lot of heart. I love the flump, and I love that the flump is coming back into vogue. And I think for a final creature, I am going to throw out Zan Crown of the Demon Plague. It's a demon thing that I invented, so it's a shameless plug, but I am very proud of it. So for me, it's something that I think is really cool. He's this giant demon. He's kind of got like a scorpion body. He's got three faces, horns, the whole nine yards. Scary, covered in plagueness. And he is the demon plague champion, the plague demon himself. So yeah, so Zan Crown is my third one. When we're talking about magic items, okay, top three magic items. Now if we're talking like all-time magic items, they are some classics that were invented years before. I am a sucker for anything with a random table attached to it. So right up there is the Wand of Wonder. That's like my number one magic item. I love it. I love when characters have them. I never get them. I want them so bad in my games, and DMs never give them out to me, but I'm constantly giving them out. Same thing would be Bag of Tricks. Love reaching in, pulling out an animal, seeing what it is. Super fun. And the Deck of Many Things. Listen, I know. These are all magic items people hate, except for maybe the Bag of Tricks, but because of the random nature of them. But God, do I love them. You can tell that I DM most of the time because I like the super disruptive items that are coming out. So as far as items go, those are the ones I am proud of. But when it comes to other magic items, things that I have designed that I am particularly proud of, are actually going to be in this new Wildmount book. I can't say too much about what they are or what they're going to be, but I got to design a handful of magic items that are now officially part of D&D lore, and they're artifacts. And they do some really very cool things. So I am super proud of those. And I also got to make This is a bit of a spoiler for Descent into Avernus, so skip ahead a minute if you don't want to hear this. But I got to help design a lot of the stuff for the Sword of Zariel. All of the bonds and flaws and stuff that you get when you grab onto the sword. Anyway, more on that. I don't want to spoil too much of the adventure or anything for people. So I got to have a hand in that. So when we're talking magic items that I've designed, that one is definitely among the top as well. Top modules, adventures, and books. Well, that is a great question because there's so much good content out there now. I'm gonna talk about games. I think first, sort of what are some of my top games of the decade that I have truly enjoyed playing. Really enjoyed Shadow of the Demon Lord. D&D 5th edition is definitely up there. I had a blast with 4th edition, which I think technically runs over into this decade, though it was launched in 2008. Specifically, what's great about 4th edition, the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Dungeon Master's Guide 2, I think, are great GM advice books. And they don't get enough credit for it. When they came out, they didn't have enough crunchy stuff, and people were mad. People are mad at the 5e DMG for not having enough crunchy stuff or enough GM advice. They're like, what is all this about coins and stuff? There's a lot of great rules in the 5e DMG you should check out, too. You want to know how to climb a giant creature? It's in there. You want to know how to make rules for diseases and an honor code and renown score, all of that stuff. A lot of optional stuff is awesome and in there. Firearms, go check it out. But if we're talking games, I'm going to say some non-D&D games here. Because I think we all know and love D&D 5th edition. But in this decade, what came out? Shadow of the Demon Lord came out. That is a fantastic game. Time Watch came out, which is also a really great. And you're going around keeping the time stream intact from time traveling dinosaurs and Nazis and things like that. So that is really fun. I am also a fan of, looks like my connection is unstable. So sorry to everybody if I am going in and out. I am also a big fan of Night's Black Agents. Oh, Night's Black Agents. So Night's Black Agents is a game that came out. Let me think. When did that come out? It was definitely this decade. Wikipedia is my friend. 2012. Whoo, in under the wire there. So it is a game where you're super spies fighting vampires. I think I've maybe talked about it before on this podcast. But think Jason Bourne versus Dracula. And from that has come what might be the best adventure module ever written, in my opinion, which is this module called the Dracula Dossier. And the Dracula Dossier takes Dracula. If you've never read Dracula before, it is written as a series of letters and journal entries that the main characters are writing. It's very cool. So it's put together like some sort of dossier almost. And now it's in the public domain because it's so old. So they took that, they added a bunch of new content, like 100 pages of content to Dracula, and then they added all these like footnotes that agents have written. You give that to the players as a handout, and then they can explore it for clues. And the idea is that Dracula is out and active again, and it's up to the players to put Dracula down. So they've got to follow all of the clues in this thing. And then there's a GM book that corresponds to it that is all like improvisational. It's like, hey, if they go here are things that could be happening. If they go here are things that could be happening. Here's 3 different versions of Dracula that could be the Dracula, depending on which way they go. It is an amazing feat. It doesn't get enough love because you got to give your players like a 500-page handout, and players hate doing homework. That's why they're players, not the GM. So it's hard to do. But is it good? is a good thing. The Dracula dossier, Night's Black Agents, just amazing. That's an amazing thing that came out. And I'm also counting that for one of my most overlooked categories, as well as the 4E DMG and DMG2. I think are super overlooked, along with a game that I really love that I never hear people talking about. Created by Keith Baker, the creator of Eberron. It's called Phoenix Dawn Command, and you die to level up. That's incredible. You die to level up. You know what I mean? And you have a limited number of lives. So once you once you die, I think your 8th time is your final death, right? You have 7 different lives you can live. And that is really cool too, because there's this interesting tension, right? Of like, you can die here, you can sacrifice yourself to save your friends, but if you're going to do it, you're moving closer to the end of your story, right? And so it encourages encounters that are not balanced, where players are going to have to sacrifice themselves to save others and stuff like that. It's very, very cool. Big fan of Phoenix Dawn Command. So check that out. Let's see. Scott says, happy birthday to Ian's wife, Haley. Scott's birthday was on the 8th. Scott, happy birthday. Happy birthday, my friend. That is really cool. Super glad to have you birthdaying with us. So that is some good stuff. I'm glad to hear it. Scott also wants to know, what does my D&D fitness workout comprise of? Okay, so my D&D fitness workout is usually a lot of cardio. It's probably not going to surprise a lot of people here, since you're looking at me, that I'm not like a huge weightlifting guy. I'm not a huge like physical activity guy. I hate it. I don't really like it. I've never. People say like, "Oh, you should try sports. You should try this or that." I haven't really found one that I'm like enthused about. Um, uh, so I try to do cardio because I know that is good for my heart. I know it is good for my endurance. I know that it burns a lot of calories, which are all things that I want out of a workout. And I can typically do something else while I am doing them, which helps. I lead a busy life. I like to multitask. I like to read RPGs. I got to watch stuff for the television producer part of my job sometimes. So it's very helpful to do cardio. I typically do between 30 and 50 minutes. I try to do 50 most days when I can. Try to stretch after. It's not great to stretch cold muscles. So stretching isn't always great, but you should warm up. So you shouldn't necessarily go right into your like hardest workout ever. And my typical is, we have machines right here in the house, because Bonnie and I are both lazy and wouldn't work out if we didn't have machines here in the house. So I have an old Stairmaster, like older than I am, that gives me quite the workout when I'm on it. So I usually go to the Stairmaster, which is why my thighs are so shredded. Just have those shredded thighs and glutes. And we also have an elliptical here, so I will also use the elliptical. So yeah, so those are the things that I will do. And while I'm doing that, I will, like I said, watch TV, read a role-playing game book, read something that someone has asked for feedback on, that kind of thing. So yeah, so that is the D&D fitness workout. Scott says, I am beginning on the 15th a modified Tomb of Annihilation. Our DM is starting with Cellar of Death. Yes, super pumped for this. Your DM is amazing. I have said to my group that I will run the Yawning Portal Tomb of Horrors for them midway through the campaign, which I ran last time and was a blast. I just acquired a game at Gamehole Con, one of the cloth maps, which gives the layout of the dungeon along with some wonderful advice from Eserak. I want to get this map into my players' hands, but I think there should be a cost to it, and I'm not sure at what point they should get it. Would love to hear your diabolical insights on this. Sorry for such a long question. Don't be sorry for a long question. Long questions are great. So, Tomb of Horrors. Let's see. I think the last time I interacted with the Tomb of Horrors was right when Tales from the Yawning Portal came out. So let me go over to Roll20 here, bring up my Tales from the Yawning Portal game. Open up the Tomb of Horrors. I just want to look at the map here to remind myself. Yes. Okay. So, obviously, Scott, looking at the map here, if they're going to get this map, they shouldn't get it right away. Now, I don't know if your map has all of the secret passages and things in it, but just looking at this, right, I can automatically tell that they shouldn't get it before they go into the tomb, probably, because you can see there are these false entrances, right? And if they have the map, they kind of know immediately to avoid the false entrances. If the map has secret passages on it, which it very well may, you'll probably want to wait a little later so they can discover maybe some of the secret passages for themselves. I would put it with a dead body that is in a trap or something, right? So they discover one of the traps in the Tomb of Annihilation, or in the Tomb of Horrors, and when they discover the trap, they are able to as it kind of helps helps the wound that they get from the trap, right? If they trigger a trap or something, it helps if, hey, they found this body and it's got this old map in it. Might be like a fun way for them to sort that out. You could also give them like half of the map. I'm not suggesting you destroy your cloth map or anything like that. And I guess part of the fun of them is going to be the tactile feel. So you may not want to do this, but like you would be able to take the map and cover up half of it and say like, this is the half you currently have. And maybe put either half in the opposite parts of the dungeon, so that they have to find them as well. If you want them to find it before, like somewhere in Tomb of Annihilation, you should obviously work with your DM to figure out a good place to do that. But I'm assuming you want it somewhere in the Tomb of Horrors. I am going to suggest that it come after the initial hallways. So if you are in the Tales from the Yawning Portal book, I would say area 14 or beyond. So area 14 could be cool, 16, 25, anything like that that's in there. And I would also be ready to move it, because the Tomb of Horrors is big and they might not go where you have the map. And if you want them to get it eventually, it would be cool to do that. But yeah, I would let them struggle through, those first hallways with the devil face and everything a little bit before I gave it to them. But then I would give it to them fairly early on so that they could make use of it. So I would say once they're through those hallways, maybe the first or second room they get into that is 14 or greater would be where I think I would put it. And if they're really struggling, falling into a lot of traps, use the trap trick and give it to them then. So that is my recommendation for when to give a map of the Tomb of Horrors. Scott, finally, I think I saw an announcement that the next book for D&D will be announced on the 13th. Talk to us about it. If you worked on it, thoughts on it, whatever you can. So yes, I did work on it. It was great. It was amazing. It might be the most fun I've ever had working on a D&D book, and I have had a lot of freaking fun working on these books. So just to sort of pull back the curtain on the process a little bit, the other D&D books I've worked directly with Wizards of the Coast, which has been a great experience. And, I worked directly with Chris Perkins or Jeremy Crawford or Mike Merles, whoever it was who was kind of leading that book, Adam Lee. And that was great. Good fun doing that stuff. Uh, this book was written. Matt Mercer assembled his own team of writers, wrote it, then sent it to Watsy, and then he worked kind of back and forth with them on their notes. But because it's Matt's world, like he kind of had final creative say on a lot of the story stuff. You know, they were like, oh well, we got to change these mechanics, or this won't work, or whatever. And I'm sure they were checking for content. Not that there's anything objectionable in Wildmount, but working with him to manage the story, give it the best flow, all that kind of stuff. But the ideas and the story are his, right? Um, and Basically, Matt assembled a team of designers that was myself, James Hake, Chris Lockey was part of it. Hannah was editing. Then when it went to Watsy, she was actually still editing then on the Watsy side, which was cool that she got to be on both sides of it. Scott Gray also worked on it, amazing editor who has years of amazing experience under his belt. And it was great because Matt was extremely open to ideas about his world, and was would let us write up all kinds of wild stories, things that I can't say quite yet because the book hasn't been released. But for a bunch for Chris and I, we kind of got our own corners of the world to write in, which was super fun. Joey Hake has revealed that he got to work on something called the Heroic Chronicle, which is just this great system for creating a fun backstory for your character using either random tables or stuff that you can pick from as well. It's very cool. So that is one of the great things about this book is there's a lot of kind of new to fifth edition and radical ideas. Some of its mechanics, some of its story, some of it's the way adventures and hooks and such are presented. If you're familiar with the Tal'Dorei guide, there's that you'll see some familiar formatting as far as adventure hook suggestion and stuff goes. It is awesome, and it was just a blast. We had weekly meetings where we'd be like, boom, 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 what do you think of this? How about this? I got questions about this. And we were off to the races. There are so many wacky ideas in here that were then refined and turned into something usable by working with the team, that I really cannot express enough my gratitude to Matt Mercer and the rest of the writing team for like the fun that we had with this thing. So yes, you will see in there, I worked on, I think I said a little bit of this at the top, some spells, some magic items, some monsters. There was a short adventure by me that is in there, and there is a ton of lore. I got to do some stuff, got to create some lesser idols, which was really, really fun. People who are like somewhere between God and mortal. Some of them are often worshipped as gods. They can grant warlock packs, stuff like that. Got to create those for Critical Role. There's a magic item that I created that actually has appeared on an episode of Critical Role already, which was really cool. I will say it was used to spectacular failure. So if you're a Critical Role fan, maybe you'll guess which one it is. And I got to work on this corner of the world that is really great and fun, and I can't wait to share more of it because it's a piece of the Wildmount that has been mentioned but not really shown at all on the show yet. So I was sort of like open season there. It's like, Matt, can this be there? Yep, absolutely. What about this? Yep, sure, sounds good. Amazing. It was incredible. Really, really fun stuff. Let's see. So I want to talk a little bit about a project I have coming up that's near and dear to me. It's called My Dad's Monster Manual. And it was born of this idea that I just sort of tweeted out and ended up being one of my most liked and engaged with tweets ever. That was like, hey, what if I showed my dad all these goofy pics in the Monster Manual? And then he told me what he thought they were, and I rewrote their lore and statistics based on that. And because it got such a good response, I asked my dad if he actually wanted to do it with me, and he said yes. And it's turning out great. Um, so we had like one session where we sat and we went through the A through C monsters kind of as a play test for me to see, not really a play test, but a test to see like what did he like, what did he like. You can see the beholder, his take on the beholder called the Cryons is on my website, worldbuilderblog.com. It's super fun. He did not think of them as giant floating creatures. He thinks they are small, like baseball sized creatures that roll on the ground, which just, and he thought that they were like pranksters who were super loyal to each other, which is not at all the beholder lore, but is very cool lore for a creature. And so that is up there. We've been working on stuff, and it's just turned out really great. So playtesters, I'm looking for playtesters for that. Again, there's a link on my blog for that. If you're interested, you'll get a free PDF copy if you do participate in the playtest of the book when it comes out. Anyway, all of this is to say that the thing that has been really interesting about it is seeing the perspective of these monsters from somebody else. My dad does like fantasy, and he's not looking at these things and saying like, well, this is Squid Face Man, and Squid Face Man tastes like calamari and he farts ink, right? That is not what it is, which I could understand why you would think that is what it is, but it is not. It is really him looking at it and thoughtfully saying, like, I think this is what this creature is, and this is what it could do. And it's cool to see, like, wow, look, you have a second use for this miniature now. You have a second use for this piece of art, and that maybe if we lined 50 people up and showed them the Art of the Monster Manual, you get 50 different stories for every creature. Well, not necessarily every creature, right? So there's a few different things that I am cutting creatures out based on. Like one is if the creature looks obviously like what it is, it's getting cut. So like a vampire or the mummy art, those things look exactly like what they are in lore, and they are not going to make it. This is, a result of kind of the test we did together. The other thing is if the creature is kind of normal looking, and by that I mean like they look like exactly what they are, even if they're not in lore. Let's take, for instance, the were tiger, right? Or the bullywug. Bullywug looks like a swamp humanoid frog. And so when my father looked at it, he was like, oh yeah, this is, he gave them a different name, but basically everything about it was the bullywug lore. He like nailed it. And so it was like, okay, so things like this should probably go. They're going to get thrown out because you're going to get the lore right. And then I'm just going to reprint the lore and the stat block with a different name. Doesn't even sound like that's like a legal and in good faith thing. And it's also not interesting. So boom, those are out. And then there is an interesting third category of things that are out. And those are creatures that he nails the lore for something else. So for instance, I showed him the bugbear, and he looked at it and described like, so this is a creature that can shapeshift, but they don't fully shapeshift. They shapeshift like a little bit. They grow this hair. They have these ears, and it gives them some power. Like they might get faster or stronger while they take on these aspects of animals, but they still remain humanoid looking. And basically he described shifters from Eberron perfectly. And so it was like, well, yeah, I mean, this is great. Like, this is amazing that you would think this for a bugbear. But what am I doing? I'm just reprinting the shifter lore with different art now, which wasn't a thing I expected. I didn't expect him to get the right lore for the wrong creature, you know? So those things are out. My dad is a somewhat of a fantasy guy, loves Tolkien. He's where I got my love for The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings from. He read them to me as kids. So things like orcs are out as well. But there's plenty of weird looking creatures in D&D. I have narrowed the list down to like 90-ish critters so far. So I'm really excited to bring that to you. And if it is a popular thing, I think my nephews are next. My nephew's Tome of Foes may be the next thing that we do. So I think that's going to be a really, really fun thing. It's going to be a project that's a while in the making because I want to do it right. I want to make sure that the creatures that come out of my dad's monster manual are usable. And that means playtesting and revising and editing. I also want to do this as a print on demand thing, which is going to make it take a little while longer, but it will all be available through the DMs Guild. My hope is later this year. So yeah, so that's what's going on. The other thing that is big in my life right now is I did complete a pitch recently. I don't know where it's going, so I can't say too much about the pitch specifically. I did want to talk about the pitching process. One of the things that was really interesting about the pitch was that they wanted to know a lot about me as an author. The publishers wanted to know, like, who has talked about you? Where have you been on podcast wise and stuff like that? And my career's been all over the place for the last almost 6 years now. And so I had to go and find a lot of that stuff. So my advice to you is whether you are just starting out or not, is to start archiving those things. Anytime an article mentions you or is, you know, complimentary towards you, make sure you have like a Google Doc or something that is easily archivable and in the cloud and can follow you from place to place. So you can just reach into that list and have it. So yeah, so that's my advice. Is to when you pitch, you got to pitch yourself sometimes as well. So have all those resources. Ask people for quotes about you when you work with them, and be kind to yourself. Talk yourself up. Know what your strengths are and play to those. I'm very excited about that. I hope that something comes of it. But if not, there's tons more to be excited about this year. Some really, really cool stuff coming down the pipeline that I will be able to talk with you about soon. So yeah, so that's how things are going with me. I would love to know how things are going with all of you out there. I cannot tell you what it means to me that you once a month want to listen to me shout into a microphone like this about my life and about myself, and ask me questions. Scott and Ian, thank you very much for being the ones to lead the charge on all of these questions. And Haley, happy birthday. Seriously, happy birthday, you great man that you have there. And yeah, and I want to know more about all of you. All right. Well, that is it from me. I am gonna head out. I'm gonna work on my dad's monster manual a little bit. Maybe I'll build a monster with y'all here on stream at some point. If that's something you're interested in, let me know, and I can reveal the process. But until then, I will see you later. Bye. I do.